Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
How's it going, everybody?
Pretty good.
It is July 16th. This is the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. We're back again.
I'm hyped. Hello, Foot Clan. How's everybody doing out there? Pause for answer. All right, glad to hear it.
You do. You want to take over?
No,
That's pretty good.
I'm finished with my hosting right there.
Welcome to the show. We've got, I'm telling you right now, I know I have been known to tease a show or two. We've got a great show for you today. We have the Fantasy Sports Network's own Pat Mayo on the show today.
Oh, that's a snag.
That is a snag.
That's the big fish.
If you don't watch the Pat Mayo Hour, then what
Or
are you doing?
listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either one. But yeah, we've got him on the show today. He sat down with the Fantasy Hitman, and they just, boy, you guys talk some fantasy football.
We were just chatty Cathys. And
Yeah, it's good stuff. You're going to love the interview. We're going to go through some news and notes. Some big news broke today about a couple of wide receivers. That's the tease. I wonder who they are.
You probably haven't heard
You know
anything
what?
about it.
I listened to some of last show, and I realized that like 3 or 4 times during the show, we teased the deadline that was coming, and we never explained to the listeners what the deadline was coming.
a good point.
So what happened on Wednesday?
The Wednesday was the deadline for teams to get a long-term deal with their franchise player. If there was no deal, then the player has to either sign the franchise contract, or then they can like knock him down to $2 million or something.
Yeah.
Really, really low.
Yeah. So we've got some news related to that and some wide receivers we're going to talk about. We got the interview today. We're going to do some listener mailbag. We got a lot of good stuff going on. If you want to get a hold of us on the web, the address is thefantasyfootballers.com. You can submit your question to the show in the upper right-hand corner, submit a question button. You can also find us on YouTube. I invite all of our Foot Clan listeners to go onto YouTube, look for the show, subscribe to the show.
See what we look like.
Right. Which generally, when people see what we look like,
They stopped going to YouTube.
they put on like suntan lotion because,
Yeah, I think we had a comment on one of
Yeah.
our YouTubes that we were too bright as people.
which to some people is very humorous because we live in the state of Arizona.
Yeah, you know what?
But
know
you
what
don't
else
want to
is
go
too
out
bright?
there.
You don't go in the sun here. The sun will cook you alive.
You know what's too bright? Diamonds.
Very nice.
And we shine bright like a diamond.
See, I thought you were going to go with the fact that the sun in Hawaii is very bright.
Yeah,
'Cause-
one of us may be a little bit more bronzed.
I don't even know if I want to tell our listeners that you'll be
Don't worry about it.
out of commission next week.
He's just missing the show.
Yeah. So, good show today. Find us on Twitter at the FF Ballers, on Facebook, facebook.com/thefantasyfootballers. Let's go ahead and read a review.
Reviewosaurus Rex.
This one comes in from
Oh, my goodness.
Brooks C.
You have one job.
Yeah, I got one job and I do it. This podcast lacks a lot of things. A terrible theme song.
Oh.
An annoying host, and way too long side discussions. If you're a fan of any of these, head back and check out other fantasy podcasts. What the footballers don't lack for is top-notch fantasy analysis, great music drops, and hosts that make you laugh a lot. Simply put, these guys are tops. Thank you, Brooks C.
These guys are the tops. See?
And just so
I'm
everybody
giving
knows,
you like a 2.5 out of 5.
yeah, he's Brooks
review
is
on your review
Brooks
reading.
is only referring to Andy and Mike on this. I have failed.
That's okay. The lead-in was dynamite.
Thank you.
So,
Nailed it.
you guys got anything else going on?
I can't think of
Hey,
anything
you know
now.
what? If you're watching on YouTube, where is it? Where is the?
Oh,
We've got a.
we talked about it last week.
yeah,
Or Tuesday.
I don't even know what do you call this?
It's a traditional Japanese gate. I don't know the exact name of it.
Yes.
'Cause I
Shout
didn't-
out to the Fantasy Shogun in Okinawa, Japan. He has sent us the most wonderful of gifts.
It is it's the traditional red gate with a engraved
Fantasy Footballers logo.
medallion and a nice message to us, including David Johnson for president.
I know it says that on there. So thanks. Shout out. You can see it on YouTube. Check it out. Pretty cool. Let's talk some news and notes.
News and notes from around the league.
Nothing happened.
No, something did happen. Collusion?
I don't know.
It's funny when
It smells.
all the NL, but they signed it okay.
Right.
Because it's a lot of money.
So Des Bryant and Demaryius Thomas were locked into long-term deals. Go ahead and breathe a sigh of relief if you are a keeper owner of Des Bryant and you're worried about missing 5 or 6, 7 games this season or longer.
I think it's
10
good
games.
for the entire Cowboys team.
Yeah.
Everybody there, because if Des wasn't there, if he,
Joe Randall would have had to catch passes.
yeah, if he pulled a
A lot
VJax
of meat on the
and
bone.
sat out the first 10 games, I wouldn't have liked the offense there. That would have been no good for a lot of the players that are being drafted high. So thanks,
Des
guys, for coming to an agreement.
Locked up on a 5-year, $70 million contract, including $45 million guaranteed. Demaryius Thomas locked up to a 5-year, $70 million contract with $43.5 million guaranteed.
And
Des wins.
Does Des rub that in
Yeah,
when
but
they go out? Like
I saw I retweeted it when you really break down the numbers. One of the sports agent who goes through contracts on Twitter, it's really closer to a 3-year deal. It's a 3-year 38 or something like that.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of money. And both guys are locked up long term. I'm curious to see, Dez's future with Romo's a little more sure than Demaryius with
Brock.
Yeah,
Osweiler.
Brock Osweiler.
Is that Sean Connery?
That was who's saying that? I don't even know which one
Oh,
of you.
I thought you did a Sean Connery. Can you do it?
Can I?
Yes.
Brock Osweiler. It's the
Yes.
best I got for
Yes.
you.
Peyton Manning is not long for the NFL, so Brock Osweiler is the current backup there. I don't know what's going to happen. He was a Sun Devil. Played out here. Big guy. We haven't been able to see him on the field at all. I'm sure we'll see him in the preseason, but Demaryius, at least this year, looks pretty darn good. He's always been pretty darn good. Dez is back. No more worries there. Chiefs also signed their offensive linebacker, Justin Houston.
Offense?
Wait, what did I say?
Offensive.
Oh, outside linebacker.
He's now an offensive.
He's
linebacker.
offensive to opposing quarterbacks.
True.
That is very true. When he almost broke the sack record last year,
6-year, $101 million deal.
that is worth the money.
Yeah. He hired Dwayne Johnson to manage it.
Did you see the video of his finger?
Well, whose finger?
The Rock.
No.
No.
Someone tweeted us about it, and then they linked us to the video where The Rock severely injured his finger, but he is such a boss.
A baller.
You just look it up. It's
Okay.
not for sensitive eyes,
All right.
but it is awesome.
There were a lot of finger problems. You said Jimmy Fallon almost tore his finger off too?
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty crazy. Hey, if you are planning on playing some fantasy sports, daily fantasy sports this upcoming season, which if you're not, you're crazy because it's a lot of fun. Make sure you sign up on FanDuel.com, use the promo code BALLERS, and you'll get a match up to $200. 200 free dollars.
Dollars for ballers.
That's right. It's not quite the Demaryius Thomas level.
No.
Money,
Could
but
be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Right. Turn
Right.
that 200 into $43.5 million. Guaranteed. Be sure to check out fantasydraftwizard.com as well. Run mock drafts throughout the off season. Get ready for your draft.
in mere minutes
Mere minutes.
at the Wizard.
That is true. fantasydraftwizard.com, which we apparently call the Wizard.
I know, that's cool.
So let's go ahead and let's get to the main event here. And
Yes, from the Fantasy Network as well as Roto Experts and many, many other different sites because
Yeah.
Pat Mayo is everywhere.
and
You'll understand why the man is everywhere.
exactly. And we like everyone in the industry. It's kind of like a brotherhood in the fantasy football industry, but we especially like Pat Mayo and what he does and the insight he brings to the game. So let's go ahead and talk to him.
You talking to me?
The fantasy footballers are now joined by the exuberant Pat Mayo from the Fantasy Sports Network. Why don't you say hello to the people, Pat?
I like the exuberant. It really describes me well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I should go with what you actually are or something like the always monotone, stagnant, and kind of be sarcastic.
No, I mean, I am pretty monotone. That's true, though. You don't want to give your listeners, false information on me here.
So we're going to talk some rankings with Pat, and I kind of carved through his rankings, which are up, and you guys can check them out. And I pulled some interesting ones that I seem to have a big differing opinion on. So we're going to start with the wily veteran, Anquan Bolden. You have him at 49. Explain this.
I just think the impact of Torrey Smith is going to be pretty pronounced. I'm fairly high on Torrey Smith, and I think that's where the gap comes in. But when you look at someone like Anquan Bolden, he's someone I'll probably end up with in a lot of PPR leagues just because his ADP right now is around 45. He's not a sexy name, and it depends on how you want to construct your team. For me, I like to shoot for upside, and I just feel like Anquan Bolden at this point, he may be safe as a plug-and-play wide receiver 3 or flex in a PPR league week to week, he's not the type of guy that I want to have on my team on my bench just because, he's never going to turn into a wide receiver 1 or 2. He might have those occasional weeks, but the upside is so limited. There's a ceiling there that maybe in a 16-team league, you have to approach it differently, but for a standard 12-team league, I'm just going to pass.
Yeah, because you're talking about a guy who's averaged 130 targets, 84, 1,100 yards since moving to San Francisco, yet you still have the love for Steve Smith, as you refer to him, Steve Smith Sr.
Oh, Senor.
Senor, I apologize, Senor.
Yeah, and that's almost, put it this way, if Torrey Smith wasn't in San Francisco, they didn't go and they get a huge free agent, I'd be a lot higher on Anquan Bolden. Plus, I just trust Joe Flacco to actually hit his receivers a little more than I do Colin Kaepernick at this point. At least, the one thing you can say about Colin Kaepernick is that he does throw a pretty legitimate deep ball. Well, it's not always accurate. He has one of the best arm strength in the league, just like Joe Flacco does. So I think he'll be able to utilize Torrey Smith in that way, where even when you look at ADOT in terms of Anquan Bolden, that's going to be low. But for Steve Smith, I think we saw the blueprint of how he can score fantasy points the first 8 weeks last year when he was top 5 in the league in targets. I expect him to start off the exact same way this year until either Brashad Perriman or Marlon Brown gets situated as the legit number 2 receiving option in that offense. And then I think it switches a little bit. So I think the strategy with Steve Smith is get him for the first few weeks, draft him. He's going super low. Like I have him at 35. He's going at like 45 in terms of ADP. You can get him like the 13th round. Use him as a wide receiver 3 or as a flex or whatever. And then after 3 weeks, when he's a wide receiver 2, then you can flip him for some value because we saw him run out of steam last year. And I think the same thing happens to him this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We were preaching that exact same thing of you got to sell while this guy's hot. Jeremy Maclin is a guy that we are quite low on. Me personally, I'm very low on him. And you have him at 19 going to the Chiefs, a team that has averaged 118 catches by the wide receiver core, the entire core, the last 3 years. And Maclin has 4 years already under Andy Reid, and he's never had a 1,000-yard season with him. But you have him as a top 20 guy.
I do, and I think a lot of the numbers when you look at the Chiefs' passing game, part of it's on Alex Smith, not the best arm, but he is a fairly accurate passer. But, Dwayne Bowe has been washed up for like 2 years now. Like, they've had no one to throw to, so why bother throwing, especially with Charles back there, able to break off so many big plays. Now, obviously, he's still there, but I think there's a reason they went out and they got Maclin. I think that Maclin is highly underrated as one of the better receivers in the league, and he actually gives them a presence on the outside. Like, you don't spend all the money on a guy to bring him in and not throw to him, and there's really no one there to contest him outside of Travis Kelce for a lot of these targets. So, target-wise, I could see him being in the 135, 150 range, and through attrition alone, that he can pile up these points. And the best part about Maclin, I have him at number 19, but he's being drafted as the 27th receiver. So it's the one thing that people have to understand between rankings and ADP, that just because I have him indicated that he's a player that I like. I'm going to be targeting Jeremy Maclin. But if I get to a spot, like I have Allen Robinson and Andre Johnson ranked right behind him, I would take those two guys above Jeremy Maclin because I know I can get him 2 rounds later. So I think you have to weigh the value a little bit before you just blindly trust rankings.
The New York Jets, you have a guy, Eric Decker, who I love Eric Decker. I think he's a very underrated receiver, and he gets to move back to his natural position as a 2. But you actually have him ranked above the superstar elite, maybe aging, but Brandon Marshall.
Well, here's the thing. I am a big Eric Decker fan, and it's kind of strange with Jason Morrow, Brandon Marshall, and Eric Decker there now. You have 3 guys who are legitimate red zone presences, and I think that the extra attention that Brandon Marshall is going to draw is going to leave a whole lot of wide open Eric Decker. Now, if it's Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing him the ball, I probably like that a little bit more. It's probably worse for the Jets in the long run, but even if it's Geno Smith, we know that Decker can get himself open. We know he can get down the field, and I don't think the Jets are going to be especially great. If they're going to try to run the ball, that's probably not going to work. So they're going to have to be passing a lot. And if if all the defense coverage is shifting to Brandon Marshall, I think that Eric Decker is someone that could really benefit from that. I mean, when he was healthy last season, he was exceptionally good. I think that people overlook that. So he could average around 10 targets a game, even if Brandon Marshall has 12 targets a game in this offense. I just think that his targets are going to be more impactful just because he's going to have fewer guys to beat running down the field. And when you get into the red zone, although Marshall has a track record of being a great red zone presence, again, it's almost like they're going to shift coverage to make sure that he doesn't beat them because no one respects Eric Decker. It's really bizarre. And even in ADP, he's the 49th receiver coming off the board. He's like a last-round pick, basically. So he's someone that you can wait on. He's a terrific sleeper in drafts. I actually have very high expectations for him. I'm going to draft him probably as my wide receiver 5 or 6 on my teams and feel good about using him as my wide receiver 3.
Yeah, so we're going to move to running backs. And you, sir, are crazy.
No.
In love with Justin Forsett, but that works for us because we are also madly in love with Justin Forsett. You have him at number 6, so talk up why we are so smart for being high on Justin Forsett.
I think it's a just range of factors. I mean, obviously losing Kubiak hurts the running ability, but for fantasy scoring wise, the influx of Mark Trestman and how much he likes to check down and throw to running backs could tack on an extra 50 or so catches. And even if you don't play in PPR, that's just extra opportunity. I don't believe in Lorenzo Taliaferro. I don't think Buck Allen makes an impact. I think that people are overlooking Justin Forsett because he wasn't a name until last year. If you just sub in what he did last season and call him, let's say, Joseph Randle, for example, everyone would have him at number 6. But since he's Justin Forsett, he's aging. He's been a career backup. No one really believes in him. And I think he's one of the most trustworthy guys on the board. When you look at opportunity, it's all his. When you look at pass catching, he's an excellent pass catcher. He just wasn't utilized that way last year because Gary Kubiak's system doesn't really check down to running backs all that much. And when you have a dearth of options outside of Steve Smith and Brashad Perriman, really, and we don't even know how ingrained he's going to be in that offense. We don't know what Max Williams is going to be like. We don't know what's happening with Dennis Pitta. Forsett could be second on this team in receptions. And if that's the case, then he's going to pile up fantasy points. So I'm big on him. But again, almost for rankings versus ADP, Justin Forsett is a running back you can grab at the end of the 2nd round, early in the 3rd round in experts drafts. In regular leagues, he might fall to the 4th round because no one believes in the guy. So while I have him at 6, I don't need to take him in the 1st round. And that's why I prefer going the wide receiver strategy heavy early because I know I can get some of these guys a little bit later on that I have a lot of confidence in.
Yeah, we always remind our listeners, love stats. Don't worry about names so much all the time. The names can be very misleading.
Especially at running back.
Especially at running back. Now, speaking of a name that people recognize, you still like Joique Bell, where Andy on our show, he's also a fan of Joique Bell for this year. I am writing him off almost completely. You have him at 19, so talk a little bit why you still believe in Joique Bell, who will be 29, recovering from knee and Achilles surgery, and has averaged 3.9 yards the last 2 years.
Detroit gets into this weird rut of just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And whether Joique Bell is the most impressive back they have, he's probably not. He's probably actually 3rd behind Amir Abdul and Theo Riddick. But I think those guys kind of cancel each other out. I was big on Theo Riddick before the draft. I thought he was going to be a PPR monster. And then they go draft Abdullah, who's a very good pass catcher in his own right. But Joique Bell is a very good blocker. His durability is sort of an issue, but he's their between the tackles runner when they need him. And I just think that the volume is still going to be there for him. And again, he's another running back that's being drafted as a running back 3 that I'd be very comfortable with. If he doesn't pan out, then I'm drafting like LeGarrette Blount. I am also very high on. If I can get a combination of these wider running back 3s at that price, I'm going to hit on one of them. And I think that Joique Bell is one of those guys that I feel very comfortable with going into the season to see how his role is. I mean, we're not going to know concrete for sure what it's like, but if he ends up with 18 to 22 touches a game, I'm not going to be stunned. And if that's the case, he's going to have terrific value.
Another aging running back who you seem to be okay with as a running back 2 is Rashad Jennings. Now, Rashad Jennings has never played a full 16-game season. He was spectacular through, I believe, the first 3 weeks last year, but a lot of his value came from receptions. And the Giants have added Shane Vereen to the backfield, and we all know Shane Vereen's expertise is in pass catching, but you still like Rashad Jennings.
Yeah, I have him at number 24. That's one spot ahead of Melvin Gordon, who I despise this year.
Yeah, me too.
But
Thank you for that.
It's just the opportunity. Like, you see, if he's going to be the lead, the quote-unquote lead back, obviously he's going to be spelled by Shane Vereen, and they obviously brought Shane Vereen in to play a very specific role. I think he'll actually see an uptick in carries, but the defenses are going to be so geared to stopping Beckham and the returning Cruz and that passing offense in general that I think there's going to be a lot of soft defensive fronts for the Giants' backs to run against, and if Rashad Jennings is the guy that's going to see the, at least, plurality of the touches, and carries at least, that I think that there is a good gamble on him. Like, number 24 says, I'm not super high on him, but he's someone that I will consider as my running back too. Again, with the Bells and the Blunts of the world, just pile up these guys that are going very late and just really hope to hit on one of them. And that's really my entire running back strategy. Grab one good guy at the top if I need to. If not, wait on Forsett to fall to me or Alfred Morris to fall to me, then start grabbing some of these guys at a later cost and load up on those safe receivers early.
So moving to quarterbacks, one of the reasons why I personally love Pat is he is a master of the nicknames, which I consider myself pretty good at it, but I don't know if I can match up with Pat Mayo. And a quarterback that he loves this year, coming into his second year, Teddy Roosevelt. I don't know how many people have heard this, but Teddy Roosevelt Bridgewater, you have him at 8.
I actually moved him down to 9.
Oh, okay. You coward.
I moved the Tannehill ahead of him. I was sleeping on Ryan Tannehill for a little bit, but I like Bridgewater too. I think the return of AP actually helps him a lot, especially with Norv Turner there, that I think that Peterson probably gets more involved in the passing game than a lot of people think. Like, when you look back to 2014, I mean, Matt Asiata caught a lot of passes, and he's not going to be on the field anymore, thank God.
Yeah.
Until AP goes down again, he scores like 5 touchdowns in one game. But I see a clear path. They upgrade with Mike Wallace. I like Charles Johnson as a stretch receiver. I mean, there's always talk every year about how this is Kyle Rudolph's year. I don't really buy into that, but he'll have enough of an impact that when they get in the red zone, if teams gear up against Adrian Peterson, there's one of two options they can have. That Teddy can run it himself. He's not a runner per se, but he's a runner like Aaron Rodgers is a runner. If it's there, he can take it, no problem. He's not Cam Newton. He's not Russell Wilson, but he will have some value with his legs. And if they're trying to shut down AP, like, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to throw touchdowns. So I think in a burgeoning offense and a guy who looked to be by far the best rookie, you think that he only gets better in year 2. Great pocket presence. Like, when I watch him drop back and the way that he maneuvers in the pocket, his vision downfield, it just reminds me of Tom Brady. So if they have time to throw, I think that he can pick apart defenses, especially with Peterson keeping the defenses honest for him, that he's going to have ample opportunity to strike downfield. So I think there's significant upside with Teddy Bridgewater. Unfortunately, I'm not the only person who likes him at this point. So he's flying up the ADP. So he's actually probably a player I won't end up with a whole lot of shares in, unfortunately.
And moving to the guy, Matt Ryan, as we call him, Manila Ice, because
I hate Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I know you hate Matt Ryan. You have him at 15. At 15. And so every year, except for 2013 when Julio Jones was gone, he's been a top 8 or better quarterback, but you have him all the way down at 15.
I like to stream quarterbacks if I don't have like one of the elite guys, which, based on my draft strategy, I don't really end up with. And people talk about this. I mean, Matt Ryan's the Frank Gore of quarterbacks. Like, he's never going to be the number 1 quarterback. Like, he had the one really good season, and you say he's been a top 8 quarterback, but he's usually 6, 7, or 8. Now, he never misses a game, and he puts up, around the same amount of points every week. He never really hits large, and that's the problem that I have. And well, I do have Julio Jones ranked at number 4 at receiver. I do like Roddy White. Like, those are the 2 receiving options. Between those 2 guys, if there's really no one else to throw to, I mean, I don't know how involved Devin Hester's going to be again this year, or Levine Trolliolio.
Oh, come on.
The hell his name is. But like, I just feel like if I'm going to go at quarterback, I want some upside. So like, I like Cutler better because I know that team's going to be playing from behind, and he doesn't care. He's just going to bomb it out. He might throw picks, but he's going to get touchdowns and yardage. And with the new coaching staff coming over to Atlanta, they're going to try. It may not work, but they're going to attempt to be a more run-heavy team. I just don't think that Matt Ryan this season sees the amount of dropbacks as he has in previous seasons. He's always been in the top 5 in the league in dropbacks. If he falls down to like number 9 through 11, then the fantasy points are not going to follow. That's going to be a decrease. So while he might have some very efficient games, it's going to be a lot like Tony Romo last year, where if the team starts leaning on the run a little bit more, that you're not going to get these gaudy stats. And that's what I want from my quarterback. I just don't think that he has the same upside to really break through into the top 5. I mean, at the end of the year, he probably finishes as the number 9 guy. It's like Roethlisberger. But Roethlisberger is a bit of a different case because he has giant games and crappy games. If you want consistency, Matt Ryan's probably a guy for you. I have no interest of where he's going in drafts.
And then to finish, we're going to hit just a couple tight ends. You are very high still on Martellus Bennett. We know Mark Trestman is gone. And the average of targets for tight ends from Jay Cutler teams and John Fox teams is actually very low before Mark Trestman was there. So talk a little bit why you still like Bennett.
I like him just because there's not a lot of good tight ends, to be perfectly honest with you. At least he's ingrained and has a rapport with Jay Cutler. And you're still dealing with Marquise Wilson and Eddie Royal and Kevin White, guys that are coming in having to learn the offense or their second-year players. Like, it's Alshon Jeffrey, and then after that, I would still expect Martellus Bennett to be second on that team in targets. I don't think he's going to be asked to block a lot because frankly, he's not a very good blocker. But after the first 4 guys, like, just take whoever goes late. Like, I'm not spending a high pick on Martellus Bennett. I think in that tier, I have him at 5, but I think that tier goes basically all the way down to Delaney Walker at number 14. Like, these guys are fairly interchangeable. I think that baseline-wise, that Bennett probably has the safest stats of the bunch, but he probably has a very capped upside. So he's not a player I'm going to end up with a lot of, but maybe in like a deeper league, a 16-team league, because I know he's going to be on the field, I know he's going to get his targets, and he is a big body, he can be a red zone presence, as long as they don't throw to Alshon Jeffrey every single time. But I feel fairly confident in him, just with the rapport that he has with Jay Cutler.
And in the camp of Owen Daniels, Virgil Green, which is kind of a fantasy battle that's going back and forth on the Twitter sphere.
Is this a real battle?
We've gotten quite a bit of heat for not backing Virgil Green, which I still don't feel great about backing him. But you like Owen Daniels a lot. You have him at 6.
Yeah, like the biggest strength that Virgil Green has is he is probably the best blocking tight end in the league. And when you have Peyton Manning and maybe some injuries on the offensive line, he might be asked to stay back there and protect Peyton Manning, not go out and run routes. Owen Daniels can't do that. Plus, the connection that obviously Kubiak has with Owen Daniels in running routes and in the red zone. I mean, you don't follow a guy to 3 different teams if you don't like him and don't want to use him. And I think that Peyton Manning just knows how to use his tight ends well. Owen Daniels is a terrific receiver. He is not the guy he was 5 years ago or before the knee injury, but I think that in this offense, those Julius Target red zone targets have to go somewhere. And I fully expect them to go to Owen Daniels, not Virgil Green.
So we want to thank Pat very, very much for joining us. He's a very busy man with his fantasy golf and fantasy bachelor, and which I am a proud member of fantasy.
How you doing
bachelors.
anyway?
I am doing terrible. I am barely above you.
I got out of last. That's all I care about.
Oh, I kind of gave up on the rankings, and because I still have one guy. I can't remember anyone's name because this season hasn't been that interesting to me. But I have I have Tomato Face, whatever his name is.
After I watch the first 2 episodes and draft my team, I don't watch The Bachelorette anymore.
All right. Well, so tell everybody where they can find you, Pat.
You can find me at a bunch of places, but you can contact me directly on Twitter at the PME. I'm fairly responsive on that. But other than that, FNTSYSportsNetwork.com, RotoExperts.com, DailyRoto.com for all my DFS stuff. Plus, SportsGrid.com is where probably most people actually know me from, shockingly enough.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Another thanks to Pat Mayo for joining us on the show today. Appreciate all the insight he dropped. Let's go ahead and answer some listener questions.
Mailbag.
Oh, yes. It is one of the favorite times of the show when we answer listener questions. All of the off-season inquiries that you have, we're here to help.
There's a lot of them.
We're just here to help you. It doesn't
help me. Help you.
Yeah, I was giving you the pause, letting you go with it. 302-464-TFFB is the phone number if you want to leave us a voicemail question. We play those on the show. You can also go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, click the Submit a Question button. Today's first question comes in from James K. from Winnipeg. He says, yeah, north of the border.
Hey,
guys.
With Pat.
I know.
And keeping in the things cohesive.
That's right. We only answer. Oh, no, wait. He's the only Canadian question for the day. Hey, guys, I love the show. Quick question. Do I keep Brandon Marshall or Keenan Allen? Our league does not put a draft round penalty on keepers. They do get double points on TDs of 50 or more yards. I'm not sure if that matters or not. What do you think? How do we help James out with this one? Do you keep Brandon Marshall or Keenan Allen? I know my answer. I want to hear from you guys.
Did he say whether it was PPR or not?
He did not.
I would lean towards Brandon Marshall. I think he's still got some time left. I think he's going to be very good. And Keenan Allen, although I think he bounces back, I don't think he is what he was his rookie year. His rookie year was just sensational. And he'll still get the targets. He'll get volume, but I don't think he can score like he did that year. So I would go with Brandon Marshall unless you're hoping this is a long-term thing. Then Keenan Allen's the youth.
I would go – I think both guys are very near the same value. In a keeper league, I would prefer to go with the younger guy. I think with the suspension to Antonio Gates as well, there's just going to be opportunity to start the year well. So I would actually go Keenan Allen. But I do actually like Brandon Marshall this year. I like both those guys.
Yeah, I was sure.
This is a very
It's
tough
a really,
question.
really tight pick here. I think I'm going to lean the Keenan Allen direction. But after looking up his numbers last year, he's catching in the 70s numbers. I think Brandon Marshall's going to be up above that, probably in the 80s and 90s on that offense. He'll probably catch touchdowns. So I'm a final answer, Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
Final answer.
Allen's year was so interesting where
It was.
He got a huge amount of targets, but just did not produce like he did his rookie year.
Didn't he?
Well,
everyone says he
seven-
had a down year, but didn't he actually grow in yards?
He
from
only
his
had
rookie year to
700 and
his
something
second?
yards last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He
Oh,
was
his targets.
he was like 71 for like 700.
looking it up right
71 for 704, somewhere around there last year.
Yeah,
Pretty
maybe
bad
it was
year.
reception. Something grew last year, and I was
It was probably targets. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, you're right about
Yeah,
one of
you're,
those.
think,
I've
you're
heard
thinking of targets because his receptions were almost identical, but he dropped almost 300 yards.
Yeah.
His average catch dropped to over 4.
So this next question comes in from Joel from Tampa, Florida. Hashtag at the bottom of this question, by the way, to preview it for you, is putting ice in the shade. All right, ready for this?
Oh.
He says, my question is about Matt Ryan and why you have him so high. I understand he is a solid quarterback, but I don't think he can jump from being the 7th best quarterback last year. His team averaged the 3rd most pass attempts last year, and he still only finished the 7th best fantasy quarterback. If we look at volume alone, how is that number likely to increase? I see an improvement in the offensive line and the running game, which doesn't help pass attempts. He likes him, but he doesn't think he's worth the hype that we push him on the show. And then he says, thanks, keep up the good work.
Oh, hey, that's fair.
We always here appreciate some
Bring
resistance in what we have. Here's the reason why Matt Ryan is higher. One, it does not matter total points finished at the end of the year for a quarterback, right? We've talked about this before. Andy Dalton, I think year before last, finishes the number 3 quarterback, but he led nobody to a championship because he's going to win you some games and completely lose you some games. Matt Ryan is a very consistent quarterback, a guy worth, if you're going to be taking one of those middle round picks, he's going to be doing what you actually want those guys to be doing. So that's one thing. Another thing is the fact that a lot of that volume that he got was when they were down and they were in a place where they're passing, and so it's garbage time. There's garbage time players and there's players
He's
who aren't
not
garbage
one.
time. Right. Think about Tony Romo. Tony Romo's pass attempts last year dropped like crazy, and yet his efficiency rose because they were in winning positions. They had opportunities for touchdowns. So I think the team being better, the offense being better, I don't expect his attempts to go up, but I expect his fantasy numbers to go up as he gets more touchdowns. And
I'm going to disagree with you. Not at all.
Yeah.
All right.
Everything
like the reviewer.
Everything I was going to say, you said.
The only thing I'll add is I think the offensive line helps Matt Ryan. If you watched any Falcons game after week 1, and week 1, I think he was the number 1 quarterback.
He was.
Off the top of
Yeah,
my
he
head.
was.
And because he was great. And then every single member of his offensive line died.
I think it's just offensive efficiency, like you said. There are some. I saw him go out in garbage time, and he threw interceptions. yeah, it's a lot of attempts, but he couldn't go down the field because he couldn't get protection in the backfield. He still was one of the more accurate quarterbacks in football last year. I mean, you're talking about what's the jump? 7th last year, and we're saying some of us have him at 4.
I've got him 3.
I am at 3 because last year.
So, I mean, that's very possible.
And he only threw 28 touchdowns last year. He only has to throw 4 or 5 more to make a big leap.
Which a better offense will do, and I think Kyle Shanahan will do that. We talked about him leading Matt Schaub to the year of his dreams.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that would be our take on it, but I appreciate you throwing some shade on the ice. You got to do that sometimes.
Vanilla ice.
Yeah, that's right. El Capitan from Hawaii has a question for us.
Bonjour.
It is related to basically running backs and drafting them late. So he's been mock drafting, and he knows if he takes running backs later after round 5, he ends up with great wide receivers and tight ends and a quarterback. Well, that's got to happen, right? If you're not drafting running backs. He says it's a gamble at running back doing this. Here's some backs he usually goes for. Frank Gore, Latavius Murray, Melvin Gordon, Gio Bernard, Joseph Randall, Tevin Coleman, Amir Abdullah. So basically, most of his bench ends up consumed in running backs. Is this a good move? If he could get the guys from this list, is that a good move? Now, he plays in a standard 8-team league, so I think that's why these guys are on the board for him.
Yeah, that explains a lot. And so he's doing just a modified version of zero RB drafting. And so for the listeners who aren't familiar, zero RB is you're going to go through 6 or 8 picks without taking a running back. Now, contrary to what the name says of zero RB, after that, you absolutely load up on every single possibility of guys who are one injury away from being great, guys who you think can evolve throughout the season. So you're actually stockpiling a giant amount of running backs. And for this to work, you really only need 1 to 2 guys to hit. So it can work. It's the gamble of that's not how I prefer to play. I like the way I read the statistics of first-round running backs with a 50% failure, but you also have a 50% chance at a high-level running back 1 in that round alone, where that percentage extremely rapidly decreases throughout the draft.
Yeah, look at the teams that are in your playoffs last year and see how many of them didn't have a stud RB. It's probably going to be 0. So you definitely want one. If you are employing this strategy and you're looking late and you're saying, what running back should I take? Because a lot of these guys that he's got on the list, he's in an 8-team league. At round after 5 and past, you're not going to have Frank Gore
in 12 teams.
Right. In your standard size leagues. So what I would look for if I've got none of those and I'm having to draft guys that from week 1 and on are starting, you look for guys that would blow up and do well behind, but you also need to grab a couple of those guys that are in those starting roles that get no love, and rightly get no love, but your Doug Martins and your Bishop Sankey's, the guys where you can roll them out. They're getting carries, and you just hope that they're better this year. I think you have to have some of those guys.
And David Johnson. Oh, yeah.
I can't deny the David Johnson when we got a brand new.
Well, and David Johnson's a perfect zero RB guy.
I agree. And honestly, specifically to this question, you end up with that assortment on your bench, you're going to be great.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Let's do a voicemail question.
Hey, guys. This is Chad from Florida. I just recently found your podcast and really enjoyed it, so thanks for the great work you do. My question is, I am in a 12-team PPR league, and I have the option of keeping one player. Each team can keep one player, and my 2 players that I'm going back and forth between are Jordan Matthews with a 12th round pick or Travis Kelce with a 13th round pick. I know you guys are high in Kelce, but I'm just curious if it's better to keep the top wide receiver with great value going in the 4th round or the top tight end, going in the 5th round. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks.
Man, first I saw everyone shaking their head, and the shaking of the head is like, that's a brutal decision.
Yeah.
But
that's not brutal.
I figured it out.
Oh,
I figured it out. And I bet you it's going to be the same that you're going to say. I keep Jordan Matthews.
Yes.
And the reason I keep Jordan Matthews is because I can't draft Jordan Matthews where I draft Travis Kelce in a normal draft. But straight up, that's a tough decision.
Yeah, the value is there. But when the value is there, that's the perfect tiebreaker is look at where you could get someone in the draft. If you keep one, you'd have to spend a higher pick for the other. So I would agree. Jordan.
Hey guys, this is Mike, but all my friends call me Tacos, so you guys can too.
Hi, Taco.
My question is more live draft related. I always have a draft in my house, but I'm stumped on what to cook this year. 2 years ago we had sloppy joes. Last year we had pulled pork. What are you guys' favorite live draft foods? What should I cook this year? I'm stumped. Thanks guys, keep it up. Love the podcast.
This is one of the toughest draft questions that you can ask.
It's one of the most important for sure. I don't know how difficult it is. I've got some great answers.
I'll tell you what is going to happen right now because I love the Foot Clan Nation so very much.
That's right.
I'm going to tell you how to make I don't know who's been with us since the beginning.
Yeah, I've been there.
The sausage dip. We've talked about my wife's sausage dip.
Can we post that?
Yeah, it's good.
It's really, really easy to make. Here's all you need. You need some sweet Italian sausage. You need a brick of cream cheese.
I hope it was just
real cream cheese.
Yeah, don't go for that.
Don't get low fat. You need real cream cheese, and then a can of mild Rotella. That's all you need. You cook up the sausage. You put it in a crock pot. Let it heat up, and your mind will be blown at how good this is.
It's very good. And also, I would say this to all Foot Clan listeners: if you are live drafting and you show up at your draft without double stuffed Oreos. You are making a terrible mistake, and you have let me down. So I want this to become the new fantasy football food. Like
I
you go
agree.
to the draft and you bring some Oreos.
And no, we don't work for Nabisco.
Nope, not
in
yet.
any way, shape, or form.
But if you or someone you know works high at Nabisco, let them
please
know.
let us know.
There is nothing better than both defeating your league mates in the draft and chuckling while you're eating double stuffed Oreos.
Yeah,
and
bring
they're,
some milk,
and they're
too.
dripping from your face.
What would be great is it's like the code that only the
Yes,
Foot Clan people
that's
know.
right.
Like
I love it.
when someone shows up with double sticker,
You're gonna be like,
You gotta
no,
like,
he's
who's
got
listening?
double stuff.
Another guy shows up with them, and
Yeah.
you're both eating, and you're freaking out.
you just stare eye contact the
Now that-
entire time.
That's funny.
Never break it. Love it.
Hopefully that helps you with that terribly difficult draft day decision.
that is legit.
I know. That's why it's on the show today. Hey, Jonathan from Nova Scotia, Canada.
Hey, you lied to me.
I did lie. There's another question from Canada. We have a lot of Canadian listeners, and I love it.
It's because of our CFL podcast on Wednesdays. The Canadian Football League, we're big there.
That is an inaccurate statement.
It is a lie. So go on. Sorry.
He wants to know, should he keep Adrian Peterson and give up a first-round pick, or trade Peterson for Odell Beckham Jr. and give up a 10th-round pick to keep him? Okay.
And his other keeper is Le'Veon Bell. You trade Adrian Peterson, you get
Yep.
Beckham in the first,
And then
or Beckham in the 10th.
you trade Adrian Peterson and you don't give up your first.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So you end up with a first-round pick, Odell Beckham Jr., and you lose your 10th. Big deal. You got Lev Bell. Easy breezy.
Yep.
Nick Vipper. Almost said his full last name. Man, I got to make sure that people can't put those in there.
The Vipper of Vip.
The Vipper. Nick Vipper. That'll work.
That's a Dr.
From-
Seuss reference if anybody didn't know.
From Jefferson, Georgia. You been there?
I've been to Georgia, not to Jefferson.
Yeah, me neither. I have the 5th pick in the draft. He can keep Lacey for his first, and he has the 5th pick in the draft. So he thinks that's good value. Or he can keep Kelvin Benjamin for a 9th. That's interesting. What should he do? Well, I'm guessing in a keeper league, the depth at the 5th pick of the draft with running backs is not going to be very good. And so I am going to go with Lacey on this one.
Me too. I definitely would rather have Lacey than Benjamin, and the value, it's not as good a value, just speaking on ADP, but it's more important for your team. You're still getting good value, so I would go with Lacey.
I agree. It's more important for your team and more important for your team's future.
I agree.
Hey guys, Shredder here. Love the show. Just want to say I really appreciate all this recruiting you're doing for me. But on a serious note, if I'm drafting between Arian Foster or Eddie Lacy, because I know you guys have been talking them up a lot, which do you go for? If they're both there, both available, which do you pick? Again, love the show. Keep on recruiting for me.
Well, we will.
Master Shredder.
Yeah, I was going to say Master Shredder.
Such an honor.
not even a... Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, I love this question because it's a push comes to shove question for me, right? For you guys, you have Lacey higher.
Yep, it's
so
an
it's
easy
not a
question
hard
for me.
question for you. For me, I have to stare down because when I'm drafting Foster, I'm getting him later.
Right.
He's my number one back. If it's push come to shove and I'm only going to get one in the draft, I'm drafting Arian Foster.
Yeah, so you're at number 1. Let's say you're at number 1.
You're at
taking
number
Arian.
1, and I know Foster's not coming back to me, which I guess at number 1 in a snake, he's not coming back to you. I'm going to plant the flag, and I'm going to draft Arian Foster because at the end of the day, I believe Arian Foster is going to have a better fantasy season than Eddie Lacy, and that's all I can do.
And I think you have to respect that. It's definitely not what most people would say, but every year most people get a lot of things wrong. So I would not say that, and I would go with Eddie Lacy because of youth and offense. We've talked about how top backs normally come from winning teams, and obviously we have a water bet going on Houston. You believe they will be a winning team. I don't, so then that's a good tiebreaker for me.
Was our bet playoffs?
It
Yes.
was.
It's funny because
I instantly regret
No.
this decision.
I'm okay. I'm okay with it. But little teaser, we do have an interview coming up with Number Fire's own, the fantasy football scientist Joe Wan. And he's an Arian believer too. So we sit down, we talk a little bit about Arian Foster and some of the stats and some of the reasons I believe what I believe about him this year.
Eddie Lacy for me.
Yeah, that's fine. I would be really happy with Eddie Lacy. Don't get me wrong.
Hey guys, this is Jared. I had a question for you guys. Where do you realistically see Melvin Gordon as far as his value in a draft pick? I keep seeing him fly off the board at round 2, rarely at round 3. Do you guys see him having running back 1 potential? What is his how much is he worth, and how much is it worth taking him higher? It's kind of the show. You guys doing awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Well, that's a really good question. I kind of tackled this on the YouTube channel earlier this week, my thoughts on Melvin Gordon. I'd love to hear what you guys think. My take was that I don't dislike Melvin Gordon, but I pause a little bit with him. And so for me, I have no hesitation taking him in the 3rd round at all. Second round pick, I'm hesitating right now because I don't know. I want to see a little bit more.
Yeah, part of his question is asking whether or not Melvin Gordon has potential to be an RB1, and he certainly has the potential to be an RB1 if he's used on the goal line, if he's in an offense that's good, and he's clearly they traded up to get him, and you look at him in college, and he was phenomenal. And so he's got the potential. But just like anybody, when I ranked my numbers, I put C.J. Anderson number 2. Just on stats, he was my number 2, and that was assuming that he is the starter. But there's question marks with him, so I'm not drafting him in the 2nd spot. There's a lot of guys I would draft over him. So it's not just potential, but it's potential and also question marks. And with a rookie, you don't know that he's the goal line back. You don't know if he's going to catch passes. I don't think he's going to. I think it's going to be Danny Woodhead. You don't know how he's going to translate from the college game to the pro game. So spending even a 3rd round pick for me is a little scary. I think he's worth the value in the 3rd. It's worth that risk reward. But there's guys in the 3rd that I'm personally taking over Melvin Gordon. So for me, I would have to get him in the 4th. I'm never going to get him.
It's just funny because almost everything you said to describe Melvin Gordon was used to describe the hype around Monte Ball in the early parts of the draft last year. And
exactly.
So, is that what you were thinking too?
Yeah. Well,
and that's why you wait a little bit. At least I do.
Another Wisconsin guy. Is it the
Oh,
system?
that's a good point.
And he freaks me out a little bit. The earliest I would think about it for me is the 4th round. The upside of Melvin Gordon.
You're not going to get him in the 4th.
Right.
So you're not even going to have to think about it.
Well, that's fine. But the upside is massive. It's Ryan Matthews, 2013, 285 carries, 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns. I mean, it's there. The situation is there. But is he actually that good? I'm one of the skeptics.
Gordon or Yeldon?
Gordon or Yeldon?
Yep.
I would take Gordon for sure.
Okay.
Oh man.
So that means you're saying Yeldon's a late 3rd then?
To me,
Or-
Yeldon is not anywhere near the 3rd.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think the
Yeldon's
Jaguars
ADP is like the 5th right now.
Yeah.
I don't think the Jaguars' offense is near good enough to warrant that.
I think
Which would you take, Mike?
I would rather have Yeldon. I mean, cost is built into it. I'm not betting that or anything, but Yeldon's the guy I'd rather have. I think he'll be the 3-down guy, and I think that offensive line is going to be a lot better.
Mike, you're not betting on this. But if you wanted to bet on something,
I do.
I would go to FanDuel.com, and I would play fantasy sports every single day in every single sport.
All day.
Yeah. You watch golf, you watch baseball, you watch any of those things, you can go in and play daily. Just get guys, bet against other guys, win some money. And if you do that, sign up with our promo code BALLERS. It rhymes with dollars, and it's also part of our show name. We are the Fantasy Foot Ballers.
Explain it slower.
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure, it's it's BALLERS.
Actually, what a lot of people are doing is they're going in and they're getting their account set up. Even if they don't, I mean, the allure of fantasy golf is overwhelming.
Hey,
and I have no confirmation that they actually do
you know
that.
who's an expert on fantasy golf?
Pat Mayo?
Pat Mayo.
Yeah, well, he didn't talk any fantasy golf today.
Because I didn't ask him about it.
He was all fantasy bachelor.
Hey. Which I'm proud.
All right. Well, don't forget, if you want to mock draft really quick, see how your team's doing, and screenshot it. Send it to us on Twitter. We'll tell you what we think, and we'll be brutally honest.
Brutal.
I had one guy today.
Yeah.
I've never given out a compliment like this before. I wrote him back and I said, flawless victory.
Oh, wow. It was a perfect draft.
It was. Can
that be done?
It was a draft that looked like I did it.
It can't be done. You want to know why it can't be? A perfect draft can't be done because you can't draft Amir Abdullah that many times.
Right, yeah.
Man, if I could get him twice.
I'll take him in the 4th and the 5th and the 6th.
You're crazy.
Yeah, fantasy.
I will be the first person ever to draft a player. I'll call out the name of someone who's already been drafted.
Yep, and it'll be
because
you.
he's already on my team.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
It'll be Abdullah.
And you'll rip your shirt off, and you're Abdullah. Hey, that's what makes you guys froyo bros.
Oh, he better not suck.
Oh man, you have a lot, dude. You have a lot of stock in the Abdullah
That's what I'm talking
Express.
about. I know.
Wow. No, I'm fully confident.
Shout out again to Pat Mayo. Got to follow all his stuff. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll catch you on Tuesday.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.